The bank teller slid a piece of paper across the counter and whispered, "Ma'am, don't react to what I'm about to tell you. Just smile and nod like we're discussing your account. Your daughter is waiting in the parking lot with 2 men. They have commitment papers ready. If you walk out that front door, you'll be in a psychiatric facility by tonight." My hand froze over my purse. I'd come to First National Bank in downtown Philadelphia to withdraw $5,000 from my granddaughter's college fund. It was supposed to be a 15-minute errand. "I don't understand," I managed to say, my voice barely audible. "My daughter drove me here. She's just waiting to pick me up." "I know." The teller, a young woman with braided hair and serious brown eyes, kept her expression professionally pleasant. "That's exactly why I need you to trust me right now. My name is Keisha Williams. I'm not just a teller, I work with the Pennsylvania Department of Aging. We've been watching your accounts for 6 weeks. Mrs. Patterson, your daughter has stolen $418,000 from you since your husband passed away, and today she plans to have you declared mentally incompetent so she can take the rest. Let me go back to the beginning, because I know this sounds impossible. I'm Dorothy Patterson, and 3 years ago, I was the happiest woman in Bucks County. My husband Frank and I had just celebrated our 45th wedding anniversary. We'd raised 3 children in our farmhouse outside Doylestown, the same house Frank's parents had built in 1952. 4 bedrooms, a wraparound porch, 12 acres of land that developers had been eyeing for years. Frank died of a heart attack on a Tuesday morning in April. He was making coffee, humming some old Sinatra song, and then he was gone, just like that. 45 years of marriage, 3 children, 7 grandchildren, and suddenly I was alone in a house that felt like a museum of memories. My youngest daughter, Patricia, stepped in immediately. Patty had always been the responsible one, or so I thought. She lived 20 minutes away in Newtown with her husband, Greg, who worked in real estate. She started coming by every day, bringing groceries, helping with bills, offering to handle the complicated stuff so I wouldn't have to worry. "Mom, you've got enough on your plate," Patty would say, her hand gentle on my shoulder. "Let me take care of the finances. Dad left everything such a mess, and you shouldn't have to deal with lawyers and banks while you're grieving." I gave her power of attorney 6 weeks after the funeral. She'd printed out the forms herself, explained everything so patiently. Greg had witnessed my signature, his smile warm and reassuring. "You're doing the right thing, Dorothy," he'd said. "Family takes care of family." My other 2 children weren't so sure. My son Michael, who lived in Chicago, called me every Sunday night. "Mom, are you sure about this? Patty's always been ambitious. Maybe you should have an independent lawyer look at your finances." And my oldest daughter, Sandra, who'd moved to Arizona after her divorce, was even more direct. "Mom, I don't trust Patty. I never have. She's been jealous of everyone her whole life. Remember how she acted when Dad gave Michael the fishing boat? She didn't speak to him for 6 months. But I defended Patty. She was my baby, the daughter who'd stayed close while her siblings scattered across the country, the daughter who brought me soup when I was sick and drove me to doctor's appointments. How could I believe she was anything but loving? The first sign something was wrong came 8 months after Frank's death. I went to buy groceries at the Acme, and my debit card was declined. Embarrassed, I called Patty from the parking lot. "Oh, Mom, I'm so sorry," she said smoothly. "I moved some money around for tax purposes. I should have told you. Here, I'll transfer some to your checking account right now. Use your credit card for today." It happened again 2 months later. And then again. Each time, Patty had an explanation. Tax strategies, investment opportunities, protecting the estate from probate complications. I didn't understand any of it, but she was my daughter. She had a business degree. She knew things I didn't. What I didn't know was that Patty and Greg were hemorrhaging money. Greg's real estate business had collapsed during the market downturn. They'd refinanced their house 3 times. They were 6 months behind on their car payments. And they'd found a solution to all their problems. Me. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you about that day at the bank. I'd woken up that morning feeling strange, like something was off, but I couldn't identify what. Patty had called at 9, her voice bright and cheerful. "Mom, I need to run some errands in Philly today. Want to come along? We could have lunch at that Italian place you like." I'd said yes, grateful for the company. The house got so quiet sometimes. We'd driven into the city. chatting about the grandchildren, about the weather, about nothing important. Then Patty had pulled into the First National Bank parking lot. "I need to make a quick deposit," she said. "But while we're here, why don't you withdraw some cash for Emily's graduation gift? You mentioned wanting to give her something for college." It seemed reasonable. Emily, my oldest granddaughter, was starting Temple University in the fall. I'd been planning to give her $5,000 from the education fund Frank and I had set aside years ago. Patty walked me to the door but didn't come inside. "I'll wait in the car, Mom. Got some calls to make." Inside, I'd taken a number and waited. When I reached the counter, I'd handed over my ID and withdrawal slip. And then Keisha Williams had started typing, and her expression had changed, and she'd slid that note across the counter. "Mrs. Patterson," Keisha said now, still maintaining her pleasant bank teller smile, "I need you to follow my lead. In about 2 minutes, I'm going to hand you a receipt and point toward the back of the bank, like I'm directing you to speak with a manager. Instead, you're going to walk through the employee door. There's a woman waiting for you there. Her name is Detective Maria Gonzalez. She's going to get you somewhere safe while we deal with your daughter." But I don't. Patty wouldn't. My mind was spinning. $418,000. That was almost everything Frank and I had saved over 45 years of marriage. Our retirement fund, the equity in our house, the investments we'd made for our grandchildren. I know this is hard to believe. Keisha's eyes softened with something that looked like personal understanding. "But I've seen your bank statements, Mrs. Patterson. I've seen the transfers to accounts in your daughter's name, in her husband's name, in the name of a shell company they created 6 months ago. I've seen the documents they've prepared to have you committed to Shady Pines Psychiatric Facility. And I've seen this pattern before, too many times. Elder financial abuse is epidemic in this country. 1 in 10 Americans over 60 experiences it. You're not alone, and you're not crazy." She handed me a receipt with a practiced gesture. "The manager's office is right through there," she said loudly enough for the other customers to hear. Then, quietly, "Go now. And whatever you do, don't look toward the parking lot." I walked toward the back of the bank on legs that didn't feel like my own, through the employee door, down a short hallway, and there was Detective Gonzalez, a compact woman with gray-streaked hair and kind eyes that had seen too much. "Mrs. Patterson, I'm so sorry we have to meet this way," she said, taking my arm gently. "We're going to get you out through the service entrance. There's a lot I need to explain, but first, we need to get you somewhere your daughter can't find you." "I don't understand," I said, and suddenly I was crying, hot tears streaming down my face. "Patty's my daughter. She loves me. This has to be some kind of mistake. I wish it was." Detective Gonzalez guided me through a back door into a narrow alley where an unmarked car was waiting. "Mrs. Patterson, your daughter and son-in-law have been planning this for over a year. We have emails, bank records, even recorded conversations. Greg's cousin works at Shady Pines. They had a room ready for you. The commitment papers claim you have dementia, that you're a danger to yourself, that you've been giving away money to strangers and can't remember your own grandchildren's names. But none of that is true." "I know it isn't, and we can prove it. But first, we need to make sure you're safe." They took me to a hotel in Center City, a quiet place where I sat in a beige room and tried to make sense of how my life had fallen apart in 15 minutes. Detective Gonzalez stayed with me while Keisha joined us an hour later, still in her bank uniform. "The scene in the parking lot was something," Keisha said, shaking her head. "Your daughter came into the bank asking where you were, acting all concerned. My mother is elderly and confused. She might have wandered off. When we told her you'd left through the back, she lost it. Started screaming that we had no right to interfere with her family. Her husband tried to pull her out of there, but she wouldn't stop. We had officers waiting outside. They're both in custody now." I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt hollow, like someone had scooped out everything inside me and left just a shell. "I need to call my other children," I said. "Michael and Sandra. They should know." "Of course." Detective Gonzalez handed me her phone. "Take all the time you need." I called Michael first. It was mid-afternoon in Chicago, and he answered on the first ring. "Mom, what's wrong?" I told him everything. The silence on the other end stretched so long I thought we'd been disconnected. Finally, Michael spoke, his voice thick. "I knew it. Mom, I knew something was wrong. Last Christmas, when Patty wouldn't let me see your financial statements, when she got so defensive about the power of attorney, I should have pushed harder. I should have done something. You tried to warn me. I didn't listen. That's not your fault. Patty's been manipulating people her whole life. She was always Dad's favorite, you know? She could do no wrong in his eyes. I think she started believing she was entitled to everything. Sandra's reaction was different. When I reached her in Arizona, she didn't sound surprised at all. Mom, I've been investigating Patty for the past 4 months, she said. I hired a private detective. I was going to fly out next week with the evidence. I didn't want to believe it was this bad. A psychiatric commitment? My God. My own sister. You knew? I suspected. When you couldn't afford to fly out for my birthday in March, I knew something was wrong. You and Dad always had money set aside for travel. And when I asked Patty about it, she got so defensive, started talking about how you were getting forgetful, how maybe you shouldn't be living alone. That's when I knew. My children organized everything from there. Michael flew in that night. Sandra arrived the next morning. They sat with me in that hotel room as Detective Gonzalez and Keisha laid out the full scope of what Patty had done. The theft had started small. $5,000 here, $10,000 there, credit card charges for things I'd never bought, then bigger transfers, always with elaborate explanations if I asked. The investment that required quick action, the tax shelter that would save me thousands, the emergency loan to help Greg's business that would be paid back within months. None of it was real. Every penny had gone to paying off their debts, funding their lifestyle, preparing for the day when they'd have complete control of everything. The commitment scheme was Greg's idea, Detective Gonzalez explained. He has a cousin who works as an administrator at Shady Pines. For a cut of the estate, she agreed to admit you based on falsified medical assessments. Once you were committed, Patty would have emergency guardianship. She could have sold your house within weeks. My house, I whispered. Frank's house. His parents built that house. The property is valued at $1.4 million, Keisha said gently. They had a buyer lined up, a developer who wanted to subdivide the land. The deal was supposed to close within 30 days of your commitment. Michael's hand found mine. They're not getting the house, Mom. They're not getting anything else from you. I promise. The next few weeks were a blur of legal proceedings, statements, and interviews. Patty and Greg were charged with elder financial exploitation, fraud, conspiracy, and attempted unlawful commitment. Greg's cousin at Shady Pines was charged as an accessory. 2 other administrators were also arrested after the investigation revealed I wasn't the only intended victim. 3 other elderly patients had been committed under similar circumstances, their families suspicious but unable to prove anything until my case broke it all open. Through it all, I kept thinking about the moment I'd given Patty power of attorney, how trusting I'd been, how eager to believe that my daughter loved me, that she just wanted to help. I saw Patty once during the legal proceedings, at a preliminary hearing. She was thinner than I remembered, her face hard in a way I'd never noticed before. When our eyes met across the courtroom, she mouthed 2 words, "I'm sorry." But she wasn't sorry for what she'd done. She was sorry she'd gotten caught. I could see it in her eyes, that calculating look I'd somehow missed for 63 years. The trial lasted 5 days. Patty was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. Greg got 12 because he'd masterminded the scheme. The Shady Pines administrator got 6 years, and the facility itself faced massive fines and regulatory action. I got most of my money back. Not all of it. Some had been spent on things that couldn't be recovered, but enough. Enough to keep my house. Enough to live comfortably for whatever years I had left. But money wasn't what I'd lost. Not really. I'd lost my daughter. The child I'd nursed through chickenpox and teenage heartbreak and a difficult pregnancy. The daughter who'd danced at my wedding anniversary, who'd cried at her father's funeral, who'd told me she loved me every time she left my house. That daughter was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. Or maybe she'd never existed at all. Maybe I'd just been seeing what I wanted to see. The hardest part was telling my grandchildren. Patty's 3 kids, ranging from 12 to 19, had to learn that their mother was going to prison for trying to destroy their grandmother. My oldest grandson, Tyler, stopped speaking to me entirely. He blamed me for sending his mother away. I understood. I didn't agree, but I understood. But my granddaughter Megan, Patty's middle child, came to see me 6 months after the trial. She sat on my porch, the same porch where she'd learned to ride a bike, and she cried. "I knew something was wrong with Mom," she said. "The way she talked about you when you weren't around, like you were just an obstacle, a problem to be solved." I should have said something. "Honey, you were 16 when this started. It wasn't your responsibility to protect me from your own mother. But I could have warned you." I took her hand. "You know what I've learned from all this? We can't blame ourselves for trusting the people we love. The betrayal is on them, not on us. Your mother made her choices. You're not responsible for those choices, and neither am I." Megan visits me every month now. She's in college, studying social work. She wants to help elderly people who don't have anyone to protect them. Sometimes I look at her and I see what Patty could have been, should have been, if something hadn't gone so wrong. Keisha Williams became a friend. A real friend, not someone who wanted something from me. She'd been working undercover at the bank for 3 months, specifically watching accounts that showed signs of elder exploitation. Mine had been flagged early, but they'd needed time to build a case, to make sure the charges would stick. "I almost intervened sooner," Keisha told me one evening over coffee at my kitchen table. 2 months ago, when I saw the transfer that emptied your investment account. But if I'd moved too early, they might have gotten away with it. Light sentences, plea deals. I needed them to go far enough that a jury would throw the book at them. How did you know to be at the window when I came in that day?" Keisha smiled. "I requested you specifically. When I saw you'd been added to your daughter's appointment list for today, and when I cross-referenced that with the commitment papers that had been filed at Shady Pines, I knew this was the day. I made sure I was the one who'd help you. You saved my life. I saved your freedom. There's a difference. But Mrs. Patterson, you saved yourself too. You walked through that door when I told you to. You trusted a stranger over your own daughter. That took courage. Did it? Or was it just survival instinct? I've thought about that moment many times since. The split second when I had to choose between the daughter waiting in the parking lot and the stranger behind the bank counter. Something in Keisha's eyes had told me the truth. Something I'd been refusing to see in Patty's eyes for years. Detective Gonzalez retired last spring, but she still calls me on my birthday. Michael moved back to Philadelphia and bought a house 10 minutes from mine. Sandra visits every other month, and we've grown closer than we've ever been. "I spent so many years jealous of Patty," Sandra admitted recently. "She was always Mom's favorite. I thought you loved her more." "I loved you all the same," I said. I worried about Patty more. She always seemed to need more attention, more reassurance. I thought I was helping her by giving her more. Instead, you were teaching her that she deserved more, that the rules didn't apply to her. Maybe Sandra was right. Maybe I'd created the monster who tried to destroy me. Maybe all those years of making excuses for Patty, of smoothing over her sharp edges, of giving her the benefit of every doubt, maybe that had convinced her she could take whatever she wanted without consequences. I volunteer at the Area Agency on Aging now, 3 days a week. I help elderly people understand their finances, recognize the signs of exploitation, protect themselves from the people who should love them most. I've met dozens of people whose stories mirror my own. The son who borrowed his mother's life savings. The niece who convinced her uncle to sign over the deed to his house. The daughter-in-law who isolated her husband's father from everyone who might have noticed the abuse. It's epidemic. Keisha was right about that. And it's hidden, because who wants to admit their own family would hurt them? Who wants to believe the people who share their blood could see them as nothing more than a source of money? But I tell my story. Every time I speak to a group of seniors, every time I talk to someone who's worried about a parent or grandparent, I tell them what happened to me, how I trusted, how I was betrayed, how I survived. Last month, I got a letter from Patty, the first communication since the trial. 6 pages, handwritten, full of apologies and explanations and pleas for understanding. "I was desperate, Mom," she wrote. "Greg's business was failing, and we were about to lose everything. I never meant for it to go so far. The commitment was his idea, not mine. I was just trying to protect my family." I read the letter 3 times. Then I burned it in the fireplace. She still doesn't understand. She still thinks she's the victim. And maybe she'll spend the rest of her life believing that. But I don't have to participate in that delusion anymore. I'm 70 years old now. I live alone in the house Frank and I shared for 45 years. I have dinner with Michael every Sunday. I video chat with Sandra on Wednesday evenings. My granddaughter Megan is doing a summer internship at the Area Agency on Aging, and she's already helped identify 2 cases of potential exploitation. And every day, I wake up in my own bed, in my own home, with my own money in the bank, and my own decisions to make. That's not something to take for granted. 4 years ago, I almost lost all of it, not to a stranger, but to my own flesh and blood. I used to think family was everything. That blood was thicker than water, that the people who shared your name would always have your back. I know better now. Family is the people who show up. The ones who tell you hard truths even when you don't want to hear them. The ones who pull you out of danger even when that danger looks like love. Family is Keisha Williams, who risked her undercover operation to save a stranger. Family is Detective Maria Gonzalez, who treated me with dignity when I felt like a fool. Family is Michael, who flew across the country the moment I called. Family is Sandra, who investigated her own sister because she loved me more than she loved peace. Family is chosen. Family is earned. Family is proven through action, not blood. And if you're listening to this story, thinking about that relative who's been asking too many questions about your money, that family member who wants to help a little too eagerly, that loved one who dismisses your concerns and tells you not to worry, trust your instincts. Because sometimes the person driving you toward the bank is driving you toward disaster. And sometimes the stranger behind the counter is the one who saves your life. I know. I lived it. And I'm still here to tell you about it. Did you like the story? Which state are you listening from? I'm always amazed by how many people have faced something similar, how many families have been torn apart by greed. Share your story in the comments. You never know who might need to hear that they're not alone, that survival is possible, that there's life after betrayal. And if you're worried about someone you love, don't wait. Don't make excuses. Don't tell yourself it can't be that bad. Sometimes, it's worse.